So I don't really watch video game reviews anymore, so most of my information about the quality of a video game comes from friends and comes from Twitter. And over the past couple months, I kept seeing the people I follow on Twitter talk about 13 Sentinels and how good it is. I tried looking around YouTube to see if any of the YouTubers who are like slightly bigger than me have talked about 13 Sentinels, and I was surprised about how little coverage the game got. Especially with how like the Twitter gaming folks seem to be praising it so highly. I never knew what 13 Sentinels was about, but I knew that it had some real-time strategy game elements in it, and that it was, supposedly, just a really good game. Now, after taking around 24 hours to beat it, I can confidently say that 13 Sentinels is a game that has some real-time strategy game elements in it, and that it is, honestly, a really good game. This video will be spoiler free. I'll try to only include footage from the first hour or two of playtime. And so with that, let's press start and dive right into 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Now then, I know a lot of people talk about spoilers and spoiler warnings. If you watch any of my other reviews, I normally don't give spoiler warnings because I don't think they make that much of a deal. Like in my mind, if you don't want to be spoiled about a thing, don't watch a YouTube review about it. But ignoring that take, and this is relevant because I think not a lot of people have heard about 13 Sentinels, and even more so, 13 Sentinels' strongest aspect is its mystery-like story. And so I wanted to just give a spoiler-free thing just to get people interested in the game and then go investigate it for themselves. So the gist of 13 Sentinels is that there are 13 Japanese high school students who can all pilot big robots called Sentinels. These Sentinels are used to fight off giant monsters that are attacking their home city. That's how the game opens, but most of the story is actually all about the days that lead up to that intro cinematic. And the story is pretty compelling, and the way it's told keeps you constantly engaged. You play through bits of each character's story at a time, with each character having their own overall goals and mysteries that they gotta figure out. The mystery bit is what's really cool about 13 Sentinels. Every time I solved one mystery or one character's plot, or I thought I did, a new plot point in another character's story would completely ruin my understanding of the game. The game is convoluted, not confusing, which I think is a pretty important distinction, and that's what makes the story so fun. If I was to spoil the game, I'm not, but if I was, I could explain the entire plot of the game in about 2 sentences, and those 2 sentences would make perfect sense to anybody, regardless of if you've played the game or not. However, the game does a really good job of shuffling around its plot and the plots of its characters and the character goals and perspectives, and, it's done in non-chronological order, and that makes it hard to decipher it all. It's honestly just a really good story, and it's constantly engaging. I'm not the biggest fan of visual novels, but this game's story kept me wanting to keep playing non-stop. So yeah, I kind of buried the lead there. 13 Sentinels does have RTS gameplay, but for a majority of the time, like 90% of the game, it's all visual novel. The RTS gameplay is pretty fun though. I actually love the minimalist design. It fits thematically, since you're kind of supposed to be seeing it like you're inside one of the robots. Also, it allows for the game to have a lot of cool ideas that they don't need to physically execute on. A lot of the extra stuff, like what your melee attacks look like or what the enemies look like, that stuff is all left to the imagination, and it works. The real reason it works so much is because you're usually not fighting a couple of monsters, or a dozen monsters, or 100 monsters, or 1,000 monsters. You're fighting thousands of giant monsters. And the minimalist style communicates that fairly well. And it gets really stressful. At the same time, you can also feel the weight and power of your attacks as you just watch waves of enemies just disappear. And this game has my favorite missile animation of all time. It's just like point it and you click and then it's like boop, 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 and like all the circles go around and yeah, I think the combat RTS part of the game is very solid and really fun and just good overall. But it is worth noting that it isn't the meat and potatoes of 13 Sentinels. That would be the visual novel aspect. The visual novel story is good, but I did find that the characters were pretty mid-level. Like, they're okay. There are some standout great characters, but honestly, I found the plot and the overall mysteries to be much more engaging than the individual characters. I would always prefer a narrative where the characters are really, really good and the plot is bad, over a plot being really, really good and having bad characters. 13 Sentinels gets away with this. It gets to be the exception because the characters aren't that bad. Like, they're fine. They're okay. They just weren't anything special to me. But the plot is really, really good. I enjoy the music and the voice acting. I think the game might even be shorter than 24 hours. I just kind of sat there and watched the dialogue play out in all of these scenes because I like the voice acting so much. The music's pretty enjoyable, but I can't say there are any really memorable tracks that stick out to me. And the visuals are good. The art just overall is really solid. I guess the character designs are fine. I've just seen a lot of anime and a lot of anime-like games, so it's hard for me to be interested in protagonists in Japanese high school uniforms. Like, I'm not popping off for melty blood characters. Yeah, though, visuals and music are pretty good. Overall, I think 13 Sentinels was a very enjoyable game. I think the RTS gameplay is surprisingly really fun. The game looks and sounds great, and the story is very, very good. The game is a PS4 exclusive, which is a bit of a bummer, but it is actually a fairly cheap game to get despite coming out in 2020. I got it for around $20 brand new from Best Buy. I'd recommend it, even if you don't like visual novels. I'd say it's definitely worth a try. It's fairly fast-paced, and it's got some really cool stuff like giant monsters and big robots. The game's just really engaging, one of the best stories I've experienced this year, for sure. And I hope you decide to look into it and give it a try. Thank you so much for watching, have a good one, and take it easy.